When Celsius created his first thermometer, he decided to create it putting 0 Celsius degrees as the boiling point of water and 100 Celsius degrees as the freezing point of water. So it means that the colder the substance, the higher the temperature. He did this because in Sweden, it was more probable to have temperatures below the freezing point of water. And as this happens, he decided to create a thermometer in this way. However, this is not very intuitive because we know that the temperature, the higher the temperature, we expect it to be hotter. So this is why people like J.P. Christine changed the thermometer to make it from 0 degrees as the freezing point of water and 100 degrees the boiling point of water. Now, what is the problem that Celsius didn't have or Sweden's didn't have that they start having with the new thermometer? The problem is what happened to temperatures below the freezing point of water? What we should do with these values? How can we represent it? How can we represent these values with the point of water? And this is the answer that is solved by using negative numbers. And it's the purpose of this video to talk about integers and to talk negative numbers. Let's go with it. Now, to start working with integers, we need to remember what happened with whole numbers. So if you remember the whole numbers, so the whole numbers are only the numbers that are the natural numbers, the counting numbers, and 0. So if we have the counting numbers and 0, we're using the whole numbers. Okay, or 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, etc. Okay, so these are the numbers. Now, what happens if I represent those numbers on a number line? So if I represent these numbers on a number line, I just need to set some values on the number line. So I'm going to put some values in okay, so now the idea is that we're going to put some values that are 0, here 1, 2, 3, 4, that will be the whole numbers, and I need to represent the numbers that are to the left of the number line, or in the case of temperature, will be the temperatures that are greater than the freezing point of water and the values that are lower to the freezing point of water. So what should I do? What I can do is to start counting in reverse or doing the opposites. Now, how can I interpret the opposite? So if I have 1, if I move 1 step to the right, will be 1. But I know that if I take 1 and subtract 1, I'm going to move to the left to get back to 0. So it means that if I move 1 step to the left, I'm going to have the negative number, -1. This is how you can interpret negative numbers. So negative numbers can be interpreted as the opposites of the whole numbers. So the negative numbers are just when you take the opposite of this whole number. The number that is opposite is the one that if you add it gets you 0. So this is why, for example, the opposite of 5 is going to be -5 because 5 and -5 gives you 0. This is something that leads you to addition and subtraction that we will see in another video. Now, here is the interesting part. Now that I have positive numbers, negative numbers, so I can think about how to represent it in the number line in the way I just showed. Now, by notation, actually this should be like +1, +2, +3, +4, but by notation we avoid these positives, okay? By notation. So we know that this is a positive number, we don't put any notation, and the opposites, the negative number, we're going to put the negative sign. Now, if you know what are the positive numbers and you know what are their opposites, then you got the integers. So the integers are just the whole numbers and their negatives. Or their opposites. I prefer to call it positives, but you can call it negatives. So the whole numbers and their opposites are going to lead you to the integers. The integer set is just the whole numbers and the opposites. Now, after I understand what are the whole numbers, I need, or it's important to know how to compare those numbers. So I need to know how to compare integers to know if it's possible to compare it, or if it's possible to know which one is greater and which one is least. Now, to understand how to compare integers, you just need to imagine the number line and understand that the more to the right is the number, so you're gonna have greater numbers, and the more to the left in the number line, you're gonna get least numbers. Yes, least numbers. Okay? If you understand this, then you can compare any number using this information. Now, I'm not going to tell you how to compare two positive numbers because I guess that it's intuitive for you to know the numbers, how to compare if both are positive. Now, the other option is that you have a positive number, compare it to a negative number. What we should do. But in this case, it's very intuitive, or you can see that any positive number is always to the right of any negative number. So it doesn't matter what is the number you choose. If it's positive, it's going to be greater than any negative number. And finally, we have to think of what happened if I want to compare two negative numbers. Two negative numbers. And to compare two negative numbers, I'd like to that you imagine this idea. So what is the idea behind comparing two negative numbers? If you compare two negative numbers, we're thinking of which is the number who's going to the right in the number line. Now, in this case, we need to think of the distance that this number has compared to 0. So if I understand distance compared to 0, so I'm going to know which one is to the right, and in this case, you're gonna see which one is greater or which one is least. Now, to know that, or to understand this, you just need to go to the number line and observe how in your number line, the least the number in distance, look, for example, the distance from 0 to 1 is only 1 unit, but the distance from 0 to 5, it's 5 units. So the distance from 0 to the number, the greater the distance of the negative number, the least the number. The greater the distance from 0, the least the number. And look at that, it comes with the word opposite that I was telling you. If it's opposite, so the higher the number in value, in distance, not with the sign, it will be the least the number. And this is how you can compare numbers. Now you can have many examples. For example, what happens if I want to compare two positive numbers like 2 and 1. So obviously 2 is more to the right of 1, so it's greater than 1. In this case, I don't need like the number line. What happens if I have 0 and negative 5? Now observe that 0 is not it could be, think of a positive number. It's not a positive number itself, but we can think that it could be a positive number. So 0 is going to be greater than any negative number, okay, immediately. And what happens if I have negative 3 and negative 13? So negative 3 and negative 13, so I'm just going to get that the distance from 0 of 3 is less than the distance of 13, so 3 is greater, negative 3 is greater than negative 13. Okay? Or you can think of the opposite. The opposite. How can you think in terms of the opposite? 13 and 3, which one is greater? 13, right? But I'm doing the opposites. So as I'm doing the opposites, I need to do the opposite. The opposite. Okay? This is another way of think of how to order numbers in the number line. Every time in context that they talk about situations below some reference, they're talking to you about integers. They're talking about negative numbers. For example, let's say that we're talking about, this is something in the context that they say below the sea level. When they talk about below the sea level, they're telling you that this is a negative number. Or let's say that they're selling colder than freezing point of water in Celsius degrees. Remember Celsius, there are different types of scales, so it's going to be a negative number. Or maybe in money, when you're talking about owning a debt, you're owning money, so we're talking about negative numbers. So just to finish, just for you to test your understanding, work and compare and give me in the comments the compare of these following numbers. So I'm going to erase here. So just for you, write in the comments which one is greater. Compare these numbers. And I hope that this video it's helpful for you, that it helps you a lot to understand about whole numbers, and that you can now understand what are the integers, what are the negative numbers, and how to compare those types of numbers. I hope that you have a nice day, that you enjoy this video, like and comment, and see you in the next time. Bye bye.